Warning, this video is intended for adult collectors. It contains plastic collectibles, questionable opinions, and someone who shouldn't have disposable income. This is not a test. This is a random review.
Before we begin, thank you very much to Sentinel Primus 84 for joining the Patreon campaign. Very appreciated. Thank you very much for the support. If you weren't paying attention, this is how I have to do shoutouts right now because I am currently away for MetroCon in Tampa, and in order to make sure that I had enough shoutouts to make it all the way through my downtime, I had to wait as long as possible. So the videos were shot ahead of time. I'm shooting these now to tack on to the beginning of the videos. So thank you guys so much, and here's a review. Welcome to my review catch-up period, which means this entire channel is automated at the moment so that I can go enjoy MetroCon and keep all the daily streaks going, which will hopefully mean the shout-out streaks as well, because as I record this, I genuinely have no idea if I'm going to have any waiting for me when I get home. But nevertheless, let us discuss some toys for the next few days, and we're going to start with a kind of controversial brand new Transformer release, and that is going to be Beachcomber. And you think to yourself, well, how can Beachcomber of all Transformers be, controversial in any way? Well, that's a context thing. Let's actually discuss the toy. You're going to figure it out pretty quick. As you can see, he is cast in his traditional blue plastic, almost entirely so, with just the rear engine, the roll bar, and the headlights really showing anything otherwise. Everything else is a little bit different for different reasons. So, like, front bumper is entirely painted in black, because that's going to double as his weapon later on in a clever bit of doubled engineering. And then there's the wheels, which of course are black, and that is something we will discuss here in a minute because that's one of the hot topics about the toy. To start with, it's just a nice little dune buggy mode, very much evocative of his Generation 1 self. I can't recall offhand. I know the original toy is based on a particular type of off-road dune buggy, but I can't exactly remember if it's based on a specific brand or not. Either way, it's not a bad looking little machine. Nice little two-seater, roll bar looks nice and solid. You got what I assume are windshields or just blockers for any kind of debris, I guess. It's a nice little vehicle. Like, it actually does its job pretty well. So if we look at designs going on here, you can see tail lights and everything molded into the back, unpainted, unfortunately. And then the rear engine molded in. Again, this is all very traditional Beachcomber. No real frills or anything going on different here. Inside, you're going to see the gunmetal painted on the seats to let them stand out and give them a little bit of attention. And if we look inside, assuming I can get a good look at it, you can see there's like an actual dashboard, which actually has, what you would expect. There's a steering wheel, there's some gauges, there's some typical things you would see on the front of the seat of a dune buggy. So nice little bit of attention to detail there. Entirely unnecessary, but I always like when they sneak little things like that in to give the toy a bit of personality. Nice to see. All right, so the big thing to this toy is the fact that the wheels are not only pinned in, which is something of a rarity these days, but you'll also notice they are rubberized. We actually have like soft rubber wheels for the first time in a long time. Which, of course, with a dune buggy Transformer, one of the things you would expect it to do very well is, of course, roll. And then, it does roll quite well. Now, typical with a Transformer, you have to make sure everything's aligned right in order to get all four wheels to spin. And it is still going to depend on how well the wheels are pinned to yours. If they get pinned too tightly, wheel's not going to spin no matter how it's designed. So in this case, mine pretty well balanced. I had to twist it a little bit in order to get all four wheels to hit the surface, but it actually does its job. And it rolls a lot better than you would expect. Okay, so it's a decent vehicle. We know that. It's a very lightly painted vehicle, aside from the front brush guard, as well as a little bit of silver there on the top. Not a whole lot, and the wheels, of course, and the seats, of course. But after that, not a whole lot. There's a bird on him. We're going to take a look at that bird here in a minute. But let's get into the transformation, and we're going to start seeing where things on this toy start bringing up a little bit of agitation. All right, so for starters, I'm going to unpeg the roll bar like so, get that all out of the way. Going to the underside, let's find these panels here on the front end of the vehicle. Those will open up and allow us to flip the entirety of this assembly 180 degrees to form legs. For this part, we're going to start folding things up. Separate the roll bar again like so, go in the opposite direction this time. Everything this side getting folded up nicely. This is all going to kind of become heel spur in the back. So go ahead and leave it open like that. Close it off. Then clamp it all together. That holds everything nicely in place. Those are your heel spurs now, so that's fine. Now, if we flip him around, you're going to notice he looks pretty done. He looks pretty close to done. We didn't have to do anything to the arms except unpeg him from the sides of the torso. And then, in a very rare moment for modern Hasbro, they decided a sliding joint was the way to go about his torso. You never see slide joints anymore because they're so prone to failure from just friction, making it lose material and thus making it lose any kind of click that keeps it in place one way or another. I think on his design, that's not a huge concern, so they went ahead and went for it. So that's, I guess, the reasoning. But beyond that, all we really have to do is then close up the roll bar here in the back, and there's your transformation. Like, that's it. That's as much as we got. That's your Beachcomber in robot mode. And yeah, it's simple. It's incredibly simple. To the point where a lot of people are getting upset about this toy because they feel like they pay, according to them, I've seen people say, I feel like I paid $25 for rubber wheels. So let's examine that. Before we get into the close-up of the robot, let's actually examine this a little bit. I'm actually going to bring in one of the bots from the toy shop, which is Netflix Sideswipe, which, yeah, he's already priced out. So, yeah, that's what it goes for on eBay right now. But if we take a look, okay, yeah, you're seeing there's a pretty big size difference between the two. So already, it's going to be hard to see where your $25 is going. Like, even if we take a look at the back, they're both pretty clean, so it's not like they've got a whole bunch of stuff hanging off their back to explain the pricing. So, what is going on here? Why do we get such a very simple figure out of Beachcomber, and a small figure at that? So, number one, we have to accept the fact that we are no longer in an age of every individual Transformer is budgeted itself. We are in the age of budgeted waves. The same way that a wave of Marvel Legends X-Men can include both Jean Grey and Beast in the same wave at the same price, that's kind of how it works. Some toys give, so others can be a little bit bigger or more robust as needed. In the case, in more modern, current thing, think about the Legends Gwen Stacy figure from Spider-Verse versus the 2099. Like, there's a huge difference in how much plastic goes on in those two toys. Transformers goes through the same thing these days. So we have to accept that for starters. Number two, it's a mini-bot. The mini-bots have typically, to this point, been a little bit shorter than the standard deluxes, with maybe a couple exceptions here like Warpath. But for the most part, especially if you look at like Cliffjumper and Bumblebee, they're on the small side because they're just trying to make more robust versions of toys and characters that are supposed to be much smaller than your average Autobot. So it's going to be smaller no matter what. I don't think he's small so that he could have rubber wheels. I feel like they designed him, said, this is about all we can do. We should do something to make it seem a little bit more robust or try to make up the price a little bit. And they had the budget to include the rubberized wheels instead. I feel like it became not a reason to make him small, but a side effect of him being small that gave them the freedom to do it. In either case, it does at least present him in a unique way. It actually gives him a unique selling point. I'll give it that. But I think people are getting a little bit too fired up here. Also, yes, it's very simple to transform, but what else are you going to do? It's Beachcomber. Like, the vehicle mode looked pretty much perfect. The robot mode looks pretty much perfect. Anything beyond that is pointless overcomplication. So it's just going to be a figure that's not going to satisfy a lot of people. All right, so we've rambled on along enough. Let's actually get to some details so you can see what is going on here. The face does have his traditional, like, swooped down visor, give him that more like stoic look that he typically has. Looks very good. Looks very good. Very true to the character. A lot of nice paint detail did go into the chest. You can see that engine design going on very nicely, painted in silver with the gunmetal behind it, accenting the whole thing. 3 colors on the belly in order to get that design correct. And yeah, beyond that, it pretty much just looks like a nice cartoon Beachcomber. Like we already said, he's very clean in design. He's pretty elegant in form. Like there's really nothing else to do with him. Nothing else you could go wrong. Like outside of maybe like fold his tires away. I might have liked that. But hey, they emphasize the fact that he can rotate them. So I guess that's the priority here. So let's see. We've already talked in length about why the character is the way it is and what they actually did with it. Let's talk articulation, because that's kind of the standard thing here, these reviews. Ball joint to the neck allows a little bit of up and down, but also full movement all the way around. So you've got plenty of articulation there. Universal shoulders do get a little bit hampered by the wheel, but not too badly. He can get into most of his poses. Bicep rotation all the way around. Yeah, a little bit beyond 90 degrees on the elbow. His wrist actually is on a hinge. It's on a swivel, rather. So you can actually rotate the hand as needed. Waist rotation works very, very well. Universal hips with no hindrance whatsoever. Thigh rotation works nicely. 90-degree knee bend, ankle tilt, all that working really, really nicely. So plenty of posability in the boy. We have no problems there with Beachcomber. So let's give him a little bit of accessory just so you can see what you're playing with. Like we said, the brush guard there, the front, is going to become his actual blaster, which is a nice way of double using the items as well as setting up for any potential repaints. Ruckus, for instance, I think is going to be a pretty surefire repaint of this guy. So now we'll let them switch that out and kind of change up the toy without really changing too much. And then, yeah, we have to get into the key accessory of the entire thing. Let me go ahead and perch him as needed. So we do have a tiny little bird that is his accessory, if my camera can actually focus on it. It is a very small piece. There we go. So yeah, it's just a tiny little parakeet. It's the tiny little bird that sat and visited Beachcomber during the Golden Lagoon episode. Beachcomber's one real time to shine in the G1 series. So it's a neat little callback. It's the kind of accessory that would typically come with a masterpiece release, so it's kind of nice to come with one of the standard deluxes. I will tell you, it's made from the same mold as the wheels, which means it is very squishy and rubberized, and that's fine because that will make sure it avoids breakage, but it does make me concerned because it is a very narrow point where it connects to the 5mm peg that you stick it in with, and that peg does there is the risk that if you put this into a 5mm port that's a little bit too tight, that you're just going to rip the bird right off its base. On the other hand, if this does become a mold that gets repainted a bunch of times unexpectedly, into Ruckus, for instance, or a G2 Beachcomber, I'm kind of looking forward to them doing the exact same thing they did with the cup mold and just keep including that really weird accessory over and over just so we get a plethora of various birds that I could eventually just cover a transformer with, akin to a Disney princess. That would be fun. That'd be kind of funny. But there you have it. That's Beachcomber. If you're into transformation as your main selling point on a transformer, he's going to disappoint you greatly. He is probably the most simplistic transformer I have bought at deluxe price point in a very, very long time. That said, I think expecting anything more of it was foolish. He should be small. He's a mini bot. He should be simple because he's a season 2 character, which means his model is far closer to how his toy looked. Thus, it is completely accurate. Anything beyond what he's doing here would either make him inaccurate or would actually just overcomplicate him for no real reason, which would risk hampering what the toy does well. It is well articulated. It does roll very, very well in vehicle mode, which is rare these days. And yeah, it just represents Beachcomber very, very nicely. I like the toy. I will admit, I do feel like it's more expensive than it needs to be. But I don't really know how, in this case, you would even avoid that. So, buy it for the love of the character to complete your G1 mini-bot sets, or, you know what, just wait for it to go on sale if it bothers you that bad, because I'm sure at some point it will be. Just know that, yeah, going into it, it's not going to measure up to a lot of current figures. So, go into it with caution.
I'm like, I think you guys got this. I will back away, and I will see you all later.
You've got this handled.
Alafi's like, really? You're not gonna help me? Like, it's fine now.
It's like these disgusting creatures breathing down my neck, and you're all just like, I believe in you. You got this.
All right, you seem to have this. 5 minutes.